You've probably seen the headlines recently, right? Indian shipments getting rejected overseas? Well, it's sparked a huge conversation. And today we're going to unpack what this really means for the future of trade for one of the world's fastest growing economies. So, let's just kick things off with a pretty bold statement, one that might sound a little crazy given the news. India does not have an export problem. I mean, the numbers are growing, and the Make in India initiative is pushing more products out into the world than ever before. But that growth is hiding a much, much more serious issue.
Here it is, the real issue, the one causing all these international rejections of everything from spices to seafood, is quality. This is the wake-up call, because exporting huge volumes just isn't going to cut anymore. In today's global marketplace, countries aren't just buying your products, they're buying your proof of quality.
Okay, let's get into our first section, India's real export problem. We've got to dig into what's really going on here, because while all the recent headlines have been about spices, believe me, this isn't just some isolated incident. It's a symptom of a much bigger challenge that cuts right across multiple sectors of India's export economy. And look, this isn't just analysts talking, this is a concern at the very highest levels. When India's own food processing industries minister Chirag Paswan uses words like disheartening and embarrassing, you know this has become a matter of national prestige and, of course, economic urgency. So here's the crucial point. These rejections aren't just a few individual companies messing up. No, they're a systemic signal. Think of it like a big, flashing red light on the dashboard of India's export engine. It's telling us that the old model, the one built on just cranking out volume and being the cheapest, is now under some serious, serious pressure.
Which brings us to our second section, the global standards mismatch. So where is all this pressure coming from? Well, it's coming from the very core of the problem, a massive mismatch between what the global market is demanding and what India's current systems can consistently deliver.
This slide just lays out that gap perfectly. On one side, you've got these strict global demands, things like SPS standards for health, maximum residue limits, or MRLs, which are basically the absolute max level of pesticide allowed on food, and complete traceability from the farm right to the fork. But then, on the other side, you've got India's reality, supply chains that are broken up, quality control that's all over the place, and a deep-rooted focus on just being the cheapest option. That gap right there, that's exactly where rejections are born. Let's just quickly break down that first term, SPS, standards. The easiest way to think about these is as the global rulebook for food safety. They're totally non-negotiable measures that countries use to protect everyone, people, animals, and plants, from risks like pests or contamination. Meeting them isn't a nice to have, it's the price of entry into any premium market, period.
So what it all boils down to is a simple but tough reality. Global standards for quality and safety aren't just sitting still, they are constantly getting tougher and tougher. And if a country's own internal systems for producing, testing, and monitoring don't keep up, well, rejections become the natural and increasingly frequent outcome.
Okay, Section 3, a new era of trade. This whole mismatch is forcing a massive shift in how global trade even works. We're stepping into a new era, one that completely redefines what it means to be a successful exporting nation. It's not about how much you can ship anymore. It's about how much value and how much trust you can deliver with every single box. You see, in the past, India often won the game on what's called comparative advantage, which is just a fancy way of saying it could produce things cheaper or faster than other countries. But today, the game has totally changed. Now it's all about competitive advantage, and that means you win not because you're the cheapest, but because you're the most reliable, with quality you can prove and consistency you can count on. So, that's the multi-billion-dollar question, isn't it? If the rules of the game have completely changed, what does the new playbook even look like? How can Indian exporters possibly adapt to not just survive, but actually thrive in this super demanding new environment? That brings us to Section 4, the blueprint for exporters. Now, the good news is there is a clear path forward. What's needed is a blueprint, a really actionable set of changes that can bridge this quality gap and set Indian exporters up for success in the long run. This transformation has to happen right at the business model level. First, exporters have to stop being just traders and start becoming processors who actually control quality from the get-go. Second, they have to move away from just shipping raw materials and start creating value-added products. And third, and this one is huge, they've got to transition from all the informal, undocumented practices to fully compliant, documented systems. And you can't fake this kind of transformation. It requires real, serious investment. We're talking about getting robust, internationally recognized certifications, building modern labs for testing things in-house, gaining absolute end-to-end control over the entire supply chain, and putting in place digital traceability systems so you can prove the origin and journey of every single ingredient. These are not optional extras anymore. They're the new essentials for playing on the global stage. All right, let's wrap this up with our final section, the future. Compliance over volume. When you put all this together, you realize that the very definition of export success for India is being rewritten as we speak. The old ways of measuring success are giving way to a new, much more resilient way of thinking. And just think about this for a second. All the hard work, the relationships you've built, the marketing you've done, years of it, can all be wiped out by a single container failing a quality check at a foreign port. The stakes are just incredibly high. In this game, your reputation is literally everything. And that brings us to the final and most crucial takeaway. The future of India's role as a global trade powerhouse isn't going to be decided by the sheer tonnage of goods leaving its ports, but by how well India complies with the world's highest standards. Quality, certification, and traceability. That's the new currency of global trade. So the fundamental question for India is no longer, can we produce it, but can we prove it's the best? Thanks for joining us.